Neuromodulation, a direct effect. Amar is saying, okay, neurotransmitter, they have a direct effect. Well, yes, I also take this point that if you're directly using something for the signaling purpose, okay, for the action potential production and signaling pathways, yes, okay, but you are altering the function by the neuromodulator also. So one function is the main physiological function, the other function is regulation of the function, helping function. So modulators, they have a helping function, they alter the behavior. But still it is not very clear really. We are not really making it clear that is neurotransmitter a totally different thing and a modulator a different thing, or they are kind of an overlapping things, or what. We are not clear about that so far. Yes, dear?
That's what I think, that the neurotransmitter could be a neuromodulator when it's provoked an action.
Neurotransmitter could be a neuromodulator. What do you think? Or neuromodulator could be a neurotransmitter. Well, two sides of the coin you are talking about, okay? So, what do you say? Is neurotransmitter, if it is a neurotransmitter, it will be a neurotransmitter and it cannot be a neuromodulator? Is it so? Or neuromodulator, if it is so, then you should not label it as a neurotransmitter? Is that so? Yes. Or means you are clearly demarcating them and there is no overlap or no exchange of functions? Well, we have to make things flexible. Yes. Though complex, it is complex really, confusing also, but we have to consider flexibility in physiology and in the body. Okay? It means neurotransmitters at many places are neurotransmitters, but at some areas they behave as neuromodulators in some areas of the CNS. Okay? Neuromodulators mainly as neuromodulators working, but in very little areas they might act as a neurotransmitter. They have a specific function of neurotransmission. Okay? Neuromodulation is, the substance is same, it's like a chemical substance satisfying all the criteria, and you know about all. So identity, synthesis, release, and its metabolism, receptor, everything is there, you know, all the criteria are same. So what are we trying to say then? What we are trying to say is that neuromodulator, it provides a platform for the neurotransmitter to work very effectively. So it brings some change in one neuron or in a group of neurons. Okay, it may act. Usually neurotransmitter is a synaptic relationship. Release at one synapse, it usually does not go into areas baid and it will act there and there and there. It acts very, very specifically in the area of the synapse or very close by. But neuromodulators, they tend to diffuse also. Not only one neuron they will act, they are released on presynaptic. They will not only act on the postsynaptic, but here 1, 2, 3. Yane bajavar, you can say that in this area they will try to diffuse and they will try to regulate the activity. So they are not the main molecules for the transmission, but they are the molecules for the regulation. They may change the state of the neuron, as they are saying, by increasing the responsiveness of that neuron or decreasing the responsiveness of that neuron for the neurotransmitter. So they are the helpers of the neurotransmitters, or they will provide some regulation in the cells. Okay? Now, one more thing. Neurotransmitter, neuromodulator, both are released, for example. Neurotransmitter will do its job and neurotransmitter is destroyed also usually. Neuromodulator stays for a longer time there because it has to work for a regulatory purpose. Alright? Not only it will diffuse and will go here and there, but usually there is no reuptake of the neuromodulator. You know, neurotransmitters usually reuptake, acetylcholine reuptake, norepinephrine reuptake, serotonin reuptake. Most of the neurotransmitters, they are taken back by the reuptake process, special process, and then they are utilized, they are reused, destroyed, again secreted, like that. Many things happen. But neuromodulators, we don't find the mechanisms for their reuptake mechanisms. They are destroyed by some other slow processes. Okay? One more very important point, neuromodulator and neurotransmitter. neuromodulators, they use the G protein system, G protein coupling system. By that, they will alter the activity of the neurons, postsynaptic neurons, the other neurons, okay? G protein systems. The neurotransmitters with fast actions, they use the ligand-gated channels directly. They open the ligand-gated channels in most of the cases, and very few of them uses the G protein systems. But neuromodulators, what they do? They use the G protein systems and they change the state of the cell membrane so that now a neurotransmitter can act better or can act slow. So they are kind of regulating. And this concept of regulation is used by the therapy systems that we give now many neuromodulators for regulating the function of the nervous system. And in the form of drugs now, we are using the neuromodulators. We are not giving the neurotransmitters, but we are using neuromodulators. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter, definite neurotransmitter, neuromuscular junction. Do you agree? It's a neurotransmitter in the autonomic ganglia system. True? It is. For sure it is. For certain. But when you consider acetylcholine in the brain areas, in many places it is acting as a neuromodulator rather than neurotransmitter. Okay? So in those areas where it is acting as a neuromodulator, then its role is different. Maybe in those areas the reuptake systems for acetylcholine is not present and it stays for a longer time in that area and it tries to modulate some other neurotransmitter. Serotonin also has the same effect. Serotonin in the brain areas, it's acting as a neuromodulator. But serotonin also behaves as a neurotransmitter. So don't be confused if one substance is coming and it is used as neuromodulator and neurotransmitter. At some places you will read the name neurotransmitter. At other areas you will say, here neuromodulator is written. But it is the function that the molecule is performing in a particular area. So you have to keep the characteristics of neuromodulation and neurotransmission in mind. And when this word comes, you apply this word. Okay, here serotonin is acting as a neuromodulator. So it has some special properties here. It is doing a special job here. It is not the direct transmission pathway here. It is not causing the main purpose. But it is helping the group of neurons or some neurons to alter the activity so that the other neurotransmitters can act on those neurons. Okay? So modulation and transmission. Okay? Both are coming by a similar kind of substances, having the same properties, even same names, same substance, but it depends on the setup of the area and setup of the system in that particular site. So please be careful about that. Am I clear about that? Yes. No problem about the modulation and transmission? Okay. Neurotransmission, especially the fast neurotransmission, I told you. Fast neurotransmission always happens through channels. Quickly, acetylcholine is released at the neuromuscular junctions, binds with the ligand-gated channels and opens the channels very quickly, a very quick response. Even in the brain also, where any substance is acting as a neurotransmitter, fast neurotransmitter, when the word fast is used, immediately couple this word fast with the ligand-gated channels, okay? Slow neurotransmitters can use the G protein systems I told you. And neuromodulators in general, what they use? They use the G protein systems, okay? So again there is an overlap here in the function. So be clear, we'll have overlaps here and there, but you should make your mind clear about the issues, okay? This is a biochemistry classification. I just pasted a chart here that you have different types of neurotransmitters, large size molecules, small size molecules. Chemically speaking, you have groups, and in these groups you have some amines, biogenic amines, you have some neuropeptides, you have the protein derivatives. There are many things which are written here. Acetylcholine is given there. This group, where you have amino acid derivatives, they are very famous compounds. You all know, I'm not going for the biochemistry, just wanted to show you. For example, derivatives of the amino acids. You know the famous amino acids. You know Glycine. Okay. What else? Glutamate. Very simple, very effective, very famous, most abundant really. Yeah. But think of the most famous. There are hundreds of neurotransmitters, my dear boys. Okay. You don't really have to memorize the list. You have to keep 4 or 5 important in your mind, which are playing with all the neurons of the brains mainly. Okay. And this is all about your needs of psychiatry. You don't have to go into each and every. We are discovering new and new molecules. You will not even hear their names in future also, but it is not needed really. You have to stay with the most important substances here. So, glycine is there. Aspartate is there. I think you know aspartate, aspartic acid or aspartate. You know the glutamate as you mentioned yourself, okay? GABA is another one. GABA is a very famous one. I think you have done GABA. When you were doing CNS, when you were doing epilepsy, when you were talking about the drugs of the epilepsy, were you considering the targets of the drugs? They are increasing the GABA or what are they doing? So if you remember, okay? The same concept is here also. So GABA is one of the famous neurotransmitters, inhibitory type, but it is there. Okay. All right. Then you have a group which is here, biogenic amines produced by the cells. Cell biology produces. Biogenic amines are very famous compounds. One group is a big group, we all know it from before. That is catecholamines. Are we comfortable with this group? 3 very important molecules are there. Mashallah, you all know it. Okay? Catecholamine group. Then you have some other amines coming from histamine. Is it a neurotransmitter? Have you ever heard of histamine as a neurotransmitter? Yes, we have. At many places in the CNS, histamine is acting as a neurotransmitter. Okay. What do you say about serotonin? Where should we place serotonin? Where does it come from? What is your idea? Going back to your biochemistry, serotonin, a very famous substance. We all know about serotonin, isn't it? When I say catecholamines, you'll say, oh yeah, hold it. It comes from the tyrosine. Yeah, the tyrosine is giving you the catecholamines. Very simple, isn't it? But if you go back to the origin of the serotonin, what will you say? Hold it. What is the other biochemical name of the serotonin? Serotonin. You are in phase 3 now. Phase 2 is gone. You spent 2.5 years in phase 2. That was a story of year 2, foundation module. And later, one of you should say, one of you should recall, one of you at least, I do expect it from you, the other name of the serotonin. It is not a tricky question, it's a very simple approach. Yeah, you know that. I'm sure you know that. You're not just coming up with that. What is that? 5? Not H2. HT. When you're saying 5HT, you have written 5HT in the bracket with the serotonin, 5HT. But then what does it say? What is 5HT? Bob, come on. 5. Well, histamine is something different. It is not related with the histamine. Okay? Histamine is coming from which amino acid? Histidine. Okay? Alright, Salas. Now we are coming back to serotonin. Now you have identified it's 5HT. But if it is 5HT, what does it stand for? 5-hydroxy tryptamine. If it's tryptamine, it's an amine of tript. What is tript? Come on. Tryptophan, you know that. So tryptophan is giving you 5-ish, it's a derivative, alright? So it's turning into an amine form. Originally it's an amino acid, now it is turning into amine form. Okay. Now, very quickly please. Okay, we are just looking interestingly at the list of the neurotransmitters and we are just identifying their roles. It's an overview only. This lecture is very simple. There is no complex issues in this lecture. Just to brush up your concepts and recollect few things, adding some of the new information. Acetylcholine as a neurotransmitter, please, as well as the neuromodulator. But look at the role of the acetylcholine, please, here. Alright? Acetylcholine, arousal. Comfortable with the word arousal? You know the meaning of arousal? Okay? When your system is receiving inputs and stimuli from different sources and your system is alert, your cortex is wakened up, that state is known as arousal, where you are more receptive and you understand. Okay? Your senses are working. So arousal is brought about by acetylcholine. It contributes to the arousal. It means in the arousal pathway. So if you are talking about the word arousal, what pathways are coming in your mind? Which areas of the brain are coming in your mind? Reticular activating system. This reticular activating system is, you're talking about the descending one or ascending one? Ascending. So where does it go? Where does it ascend? Cortex. The final destination, you have to activate the cortex through the thalamus, thalamocortical projections, and you are finally reaching the, alright, okay, limbic system you have just done. Emotions. Many areas of limbic system, really, okay? Amygdala, the other parts, limbic cortex, they have special cholinergic neurons which are acting as neurotransmitters and neuromodulators. You don't have to remember that where is it exactly neuromodulator and where is it neurotransmitter. Okay? You must know that in some of the distinct areas like neuromuscular junctions and autonomic, it is neurotransmitter. In the brain, the role is a dual role actually. In some areas neurotransmitter, in some areas neuromodulator. But overall, this is the work of acetylcholine. What else? Learning. What is learning, by the way, boys? Learning. New skills. Learning new skills. Define learning, okay? We are not talking about that. Define learning. What do you understand with the word learning? To know something is understanding.
Acquire new skill. Ability to acquire something. The ability to use experience.
Ability to
do something.
To do something. That is work. Okay? Ability to do something. This is the definition of physics. Work. Okay? The capability of doing something.
To receive and remember something. Receive and remember something.
To receive and remember something. You have received and you remember that. But then what is memory?
Receive and apply.
Yeah.
Receive and apply.
Alright. Okay. Yes?
Acquiring new information.
Acquiring new information. That's a very good part of the definition. Okay. Acquiring new information. That's good. Okay. Generally we understand learning by this one. But learning, when you talk about the psychology, because you are talking about the psychiatry and psychology here now, or in general, learning how do you see I have learned? Then I have learned something and you are observing me. How do you see that I have learned? You have to have.
Develop a skill or behavior.
That's a word, okay? Thank you. Behavior. So, what is happening to my behavior? Change. Now you are coming to the definition. A change in behavior. Okay, when you acquire some information and that brings a relatively permanent change. I'm not saying completely permanent change, but a relatively permanent change in your behavior. Okay? When some information or knowledge is going, or skill, any form is going inside you, and your behavior is changed, okay, and that change is demonstrated or seen or observe, then you call it learning. Okay? So in the learning pathways, acetylcholine is playing a very important role. Motor system function. What do you mean by motor system function, acetylcholine, brain? Don't just read it as a chart. Think about it. Why is it written here? Motor system, okay, motor system, khalas. I'll remember it, I'll recall it. But no, you have to think and apply. Why are you using this motor system here? Okay, neuromuscular junction. This is one thing. Very good. What else? Now you go back to the brain. Okay, neuromuscular junction is done. In the brain, motor system, acetylcholine. Motor areas, the motor pathways. Motor pathways, where exactly? Can you recall? Okay. Any other circuits or any other areas where acetylcholine is very important? And if it is basal ganglia, can you recall in the basal ganglia the role of acetylcholine? From the cortex to the striatum, the pathways are coming and they secrete acetylcholine. If these pathways are affected, then definitely there is a change. And one of the aspects, if acetylcholine is increased or it is imbalance of acetylcholine, okay, so Parkinsonism, either dopamine is going down or acetylcholine, it's a balance, the Tawazun is shifted by any means, really, isn't it? So if cholinergic balance is more, then what kind of problem happens in Parkinsonism? Select one out of three. I know, you know all three. Rigidity, tremors and bradykinesia or akinesia, you know about that, I'm sure. But out of that, which one would be most affected really if acetylcholine goes in excess? One thing. It's mostly tremors are affected. So a motor disorder is developing, isn't it? Okay, good. Thank you very much. Short-term memory. Short-term memory. Okay. Have you studied memory or not? Yes. You have. Okay. Have you done the types of memory? Short-term, intermediate, long-term. Short-term memory is affected. Okay. Short-term memory is really short memory, staying for few minutes really, okay, to a little more. Okay, for example, I give you my number. Okay, you quickly memorize my number 2-3 times. Okay, it will stay in your short-term memory, but because you are busy with some other things, after 15 minutes, after half an hour, you will not remember my number. There is no trouble with you, mashallah. You are very intelligent. Okay, you remember everything, but how would you remember that? Okay, it's washed completely. So if you don't process it and shift it by some means into the long-term memory, it's vanished. It's gone. A very short term. Glutamic acid or the glutamate, very quickly. Okay. Excitatory. Going back to acetylcholine, was the role excitatory or inhibitory? Or the third choice is both. What is your choice?
Mainly excitatory.
Where, when you say mainly excitatory, we are doing it contextually, okay? Yes, okay, in the brain we are talking about, not in the neuromuscular junction. Of course it is excitatory there. So what about brain? Mainly excitatory? Okay. Could it be inhibitory as well? Is it possible? Yes, okay. So at some places acetylcholine is acting as inhibitory neurotransmitter, or in modulation it is decreasing the activity of the neurons also, that is possible, and in other places it is excitatory. Okay. Again, role is coming for glutamate here. Glutamate is the excitatory neurotransmitter, and glutamate has the credit of being most abundant, most famous, most common neurotransmitter. Okay. So if you consider all the neurons of the brain and think of the percentage of the neurons, so the glutamate secreting neurons will have the greatest percentage because glutamate is the most common neurotransmitter, excitatory one which is produced by the brain. Don't forget that. Long-term memory, it has a role. Glutamate is associated with the long-term potentiation or the changes, plasticity, which is coming in the neurons, the molecular changes which are happening in the synapses when the memory pathways are developing, long-term memory is developing, glutamate is active in those areas. Glutamate is supporting the long-term potentiation. Okay. Areas are definitely cerebral cortex and hippocampus. Cerebral cortex has the maximum number of the glutamate secreting neurons. Don't forget that. Okay. Well, this is another very famous one, but this time, yes, you will have the word inhibitory coming in your mind. The key word is inhibitory. GABA is inhibitory in nature, and it decreases the activity of the neurons, excitability of the neurons, suppresses that. And I'm sure you have heard about lack of GABA associated with abnormal motor activity also, and that activity is reflected in the form of epilepsy, different forms of epilepsy. So GABAergic drugs are given for the treatment of the GABA agonist drugs or GABA-like drugs which mimic GABA or which potentiate GABA or which help GABA, whatever. The focus is GABA. Okay?
Victor,
Yeah?
you said that we don't use neurotransmitters in treatment.
See, we do. Yes. Generally speaking, we don't. Generally speaking, we don't. But there are few things. Can you just give me a second? Hello?